All right, today we're going to rewind the clock. And I mean way, way back. We are diving into the original human survival story. We're going to look at how our earliest ancestors didn't just get by, but actually thrived in a world without, well, pretty much anything we take for granted today.
But seriously, just for a second, picture it. No grocery stores, no solid walls to keep you warm, no Wi-Fi. It's just you and the wild. What's your first move? How do you find your next meal? How do you protect yourself from the elements? Where do you even begin?
It's a scenario that's honestly hard for us to truly wrap our heads around. But for the vast majority of human history, this was just reality. Our ancestors didn't just survive this, they spread across the entire globe using nothing more than their wits, their own two hands, and whatever they could find around them. It's an incredible story.
So how in the world did they pull it off? What was their secret weapon against a planet that was, let's be honest, pretty challenging? Well, their first and maybe their most important innovation wasn't a physical tool. It was a social one. It was the idea that, hey, maybe we're stronger together.
You see, they lived in these small, really tight-knit groups that we call bands. We're not talking about huge cities here. Think more like an extended family of maybe 20 to 50 people. In a group this size, everybody knew everybody. And more importantly, everyone had to rely on each other. Their actual survival depended on it. This wasn't just a smart strategy, it was the beginning of our deeply social nature as humans.
And this cooperation was super organized. It wasn't a free-for-all. Everyone had a job to do. Men often took on the high-risk but also high-reward task of hunting big game. The women and children, on the other hand, were the consistent providers, gathering the plants, nuts, and berries that made up most of their diet. And the elders? Oh, they were absolutely crucial. They were the group's living libraries, holding generations of knowledge about the land, the seasons, you name it.
Okay, but teamwork alone wasn't going to cut it. Our ancestors needed an edge, a way to overcome their own physical limits. And that brings us to their next brilliant solution, technology. And I'm talking about the world's very first ultimate survival kit.
Forget your smartphone and your laptop. This was the essential tech of the Stone Age. A sharp-edged stone wasn't just a rock, you know? It was a knife, it was a scraper, it was an axe, all in one. A simple wooden spear could literally be the difference between starving and feasting. And those tiny bone needles, they allowed our ancestors to stitch animal hides into actual clothing and sturdy shelters, which was absolutely critical for surviving harsh weather.
And making these tools, wow, it took incredible skill and intelligence. This was a really precise, multi-step process. First, you had to find the perfect kind of rock. Then you had to strike it with just the right amount of force, at the exact right angle. And then you had to skillfully shape the pieces that flaked off into a useful edge. This was engineering, pure and simple.
Now, of all their amazing innovations, one really does stand above the rest as a true game changer. And that is the mastery of fire. I mean, think about it. Fire gave them warmth in the freezing cold, it gave them light in the darkness, and it gave them a way to cook food, which not only made it safer, but unlocked way more nutrients. And maybe most importantly, it offered protection, keeping dangerous predators away at night. The campfire became the heart of the entire community.
So they had community, and they had technology. What was the third part of their strategy for success? Well, it's simple. They didn't stay put. And being nomadic wasn't about just aimlessly wandering around. No, it was a clever and calculated way of adapting to their environment.
Every move they made was packed with purpose. They followed the great herds of animals on their seasonal migrations. They moved to areas where they knew fruits would be ripening or nuts would be ready to collect. This lifestyle allowed them to live completely in sync with the rhythm of the natural world, making sure they were always where the resources were. It was brilliant.
And when you put these two lifestyles side by side, you can really see just how fundamentally different they were. On one side, you've got the mobile hunter-gatherer, following the food, living in temporary shelters. And on the other, the settled farmer, who came much later, staying in one place and growing their own crops. We're talking about two completely different relationships with the planet.
So these strategies, teamwork, technology, and mobility, they didn't just help our ancestors survive. They literally laid the groundwork for everything that was to come. So let's take a look at their incredible legacy and see how these first peoples shaped the world that we all live in today.
Yeah, this quote really hits the nail on the head.
It's so important to remember that these early humans weren't just passively existing. They were actively creating. They were the first to shape culture, the first to invent world-changing technology, and the first to build complex societies. Every single civilization that followed is built on the foundation that they laid.
And you have to see this timeline to really get it. The sheer scale is just mind-boggling. For almost 2.5 million years, being a hunter-gatherer wasn't a way of life, it was the only way of life. Farming, the thing we based our whole society on, that's a super recent invention in the grand scheme of things. For over 95% of the time modern humans have existed, we were hunter-gatherers. That lifestyle is just baked into our history.
So in the end, their solutions to the problems of day-to-day survival became our inheritance. The need to coordinate together on the hunt, that helped forge language. The desire to share stories and beliefs around that campfire, that led to the very first art on cave walls. And their simple stone axes were the great-great-great-great-grandfathers of every tool we use today.
And that kind of brings us to a final thought. Our ancestors invented the fundamentals: cooperation, innovation, adaptation. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. In our incredibly complex modern world, which one of these ancient survival skills do you think matters most for our survival today?